Okay, now we're going to use that interquartile range and we're going to talk about outliers. That's a word we've used before. So it is outside of the general cluster of data. It's beyond what you would normally expect it to be. And we call those extreme. So these are extreme, high, and low observations. That's what it is. So these extreme, high, and low observations. That's considered an outlier outside of what I would normally expect in terms of my observations. Okay, so we can use our quartiles and our interquartile range in order to figure this out. So the first thing we want to do is figure out the quartiles. And then the first and third in particular, because we're going to compute that interquartile range, which we know to be Q3 minus Q1, is the interquartile range. And then we determine a fence. All right, they're called fence. That's just the terminology for it. Those are the cutoff points for determining outliers. How far outside of the scope are we going to go? That's the question. So the lower fence, so if I'm looking at this data, I'm saying this is my median. How far out to the left and how far out to the right are we going to go to make it an outlier? What makes it extreme? You see what I'm getting? Outside of my fence becomes extreme. So my lower fence is quartile 1, because I'm looking here at quartile 1 and it's past that, past quartile 3 for the upper. So quartile 1, and I want to go back in this direction. So I'm going to subtract, and we're going to say 1.5 times that interquartile range. That's what's happening. So 1.5 times that interquartile range puts us outside of that fence. The upper fence, same concept, but from quartile 3, I'm saying plus 1.5 times that interquartile range. So 1.5 times that range above, and I add it to it, the quartile 3, or subtract 1.5 times, because I'm saying how far out is my data. And then if it's outside of that, it's considered extreme. And that's what makes it an outlier. Okay, so if the data value is less than the lower fence or greater than the upper fence, that's what makes an outlier. All right, so let's do that. Let's use that same data that we had. I'm going to keep these formulas up here so we can check the collision coverage claims. Oh my, that's a mouthful, isn't it? In table 16 for those outliers. So if I want my lower fence, that's going to be quartile 1 minus 1.5 times that interquartile range. We can pull all of that information. Let me squeeze this in. There's my interquartile range, and I have my quartile 3 and my quartile 1 up there with it. So it works out handy, right? All right. So my lower fence puts me at quartile 1, which is 735 minus 1.5 times that interquartile range, which we learned to be 3,933. All right, so put all of that into your handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to scoot this up, and what do we get? So my lower fence, I'm going to put LF here for lower fence, is going to be negative 5,164.50. So it's because it's dollars, so I'm going to put 50. So do we have any data that's beyond that? No, we're not going to have any data that's beyond the negative. So that's outside of my scope. We don't have any data values that are too low based on our data. All right. Okay. Well, let's see if we have any that are too high outside of that normal range. So let's look at our upper fence. And I'm going to squeeze this down so I can see my upper fence is based on quartile 3, which is 4,668. So I'm going to make this to where we can see it better. So quartile 3 plus 1.5 times that interquartile range. That's a 5. So 4,668 plus 1.5 times that 3,933. And my upper fence, I'm doing UF for upper fence, is 10,567.50. Do we have any data values that are beyond 10,567? The beauty of setting this all up is then we can look at this. Yeah, 10,567 is in between here. Ooh, that 21,000, that's outside of the norm. So either someone got a real good deal or some major thing was happening there. 21,147 is an outlier. Yes, 21,147 is an outlier. That is beyond what we consider our grouped data. It's outside of that upper fence. All right? It's just another way to see where the fence, how can I work with this? That's what we're playing with here. All right? Okay. Great job, guys. We're going to use all of this information in 3.5. So hang on to it because it's very important and we're just going to build on it again. 3.4 and 3.5 go together very nicely.